Thank you for being here. And I never dreamed that I was to be the one to tell the story of how the Filipinos lived here in where Hardin's is located now. My sister and I, she was going to be here, but she couldn't make it at the last minute. I don't know, I was, I guess, to be the one to tell the story, I guess, because my sister and I were the only survivors of this place where we lived. And I'm going to tell it like it was. I'm going to tell the truth.
All children leave, please.
First of all, my dad, who's Filipino, he left the Philippines to migrate, from the Philippines before the 1920s. And that's how he came over by steamship, by quotas. The Filipinos came over by quotas. They came to work as laborers, and so anyway, he stopped over at Hawaii, the Big Island. So he worked on the sugar plantation, and my mother was working there as a cook, helping her aunt cook for the plantation laborers. So she met my father. Of course, he was a nice-looking man and good height for Filipino. Fell in love. So they married in 1917. The first Filipino-Japanese couple to marry on the Big Island at that time. So anyway, later on, with the help of my mother's grandfather, they came to California. And so they settled in Ileton, California, the asparagus capital. And so we lived in the Oriental district of Ileton, right next to the levee. You can't go farther than that. So anyway, my sister, my older sister and brother were born in Hawaii. And then my younger sister and I were born in Ileton in the 1924, 27. So my father worked as in the asparagus, and there were a lot of Filipino laborers there. And so he was the foreman. So then later on, there was a fire in the Oriental section, and it burnt where the Oriental section was. It was a neat section, and sidewalk like that, and we lived in a boarding house. So the fire destroyed the possessions of my, parents and us. And my father wanted to go in there and save what he can, but the firefighters prevented him to enter the building. So that was a hard time to start from scratch. So anyway, later we moved to Lodi area, and my father worked in the grapes. And there were a lot of Filipino laborers there. So the Depression hit. So my father felt like giving up. you know, he just lost interest, like. So we moved to Salinas area. So my father worked in the lettuce fields. And I went to around 11 different schools in my lifetime. So then, so we lived in the Blanco area, Spreckles, and in town, Salinas, and just many different places. And I went to attended first and second grade in the two-room schoolhouse at the grade school. The school at in between Salinas and Castroville, you know. So then later on, we came to San Juan. So we lived in that Hardin's area, you know, where the Hardin's restaurant is now, inside there. And it was just like a village. The Filipinos, some of the Filipino workers lived in there. So we lived among them, and my father and mother had separated early in 1935, but we came to San Juan in 36. Around there when I was in fourth grade. And so we lived right across from the Mission Hardware, where the Mansmiths' parents were. They ran that hardware there. And then the red and white store was there, the Lavaninos. Mr. Lavanino ran that store on the corner. And so that building there on the corner there, that Galleria Tunansan, was a two-story building there. And inside that place where we lived in that Hardin's area was just like a village in there. You get in there and you think you were in another world. So anyway, the tax, Mr. Anton Tax owned that area. So when we lived there, and there was 10, those buildings were divided into 10 different dwellings. And this, the one in the corner, the two-story one, was rented out, you know, too. So, all those dwellings there, we had no hot water coming through the pipes, just cold water. And what do you call, bathrooms were not in homes, in dwellings. We had this, what do you call, little bathhouse.
Oh, no.
No, the bathhouse, you know. It was old and broken, some places in the walls, you know, like that. Good thing on the bottom anyhow. But there was, like you call the hot tub nowadays. That was, I guess, the beginning of the hot tubs. And the Japanese had it too. And then we wonder why it didn't burn down, because there was fire lit under the hot tub. And a certain time of the day they started, because the Filipino laborers would, you know, after 8 hours of work every day, come home, and then they take their baths in the evening. So that's when we took our baths. You know. So anyway, there was this fire underneath the tub on the outside. There's an opening there, and throw wood in there, keep it going, you know. So until it burned down to glow like that. So it kept the water in there warm for a long time throughout the evening. Sometimes they threw corn in there. roasted. So it's a good thing. And then you get in this little building there, a little hot, you know, and maybe two at a time. So, but with all those people living in that 10, what do you call, rentals, that was what we used to bathe in. So the floor of the bathroom in the room there, the water just went through right through the floors onto the ground underneath there. So anyway, we'd take a bath on the outside of that top because it's too hot to get in there in the first place. But you have to regulate the temperature. You know, with just the one only faucet there hanging over that tub, you know. And so if you get in there, you come out pink. So anyway, we had a ladle with a long handle on it. Dip it in the water there, and then we bathe outside of that tub. And that tub was surrounded by thick wood, you know, around there. Good thing that you burn yourself if you touch that metal anyhow. But anyway, for all the 10 rentals, we had only one toilet. Can you imagine that? And but that toilet, you know, it was amazingly clean, sparkling clean, because my sister Rosie helped to clean it. And so we didn't have hot water in the house too. So it was hard, you know, when it came to dishwashing time, you know. And I was the dishwasher. And I was the launderer. And I was the house cleaner. And Rose, well, anyway, she did her part too. We noticed when we first moved there, we noticed all those bottles under the floor of the building where we lived. And so we lived right next to the street, but you know, we were enclosed in there. Nobody saw what was going on in there. It's like a little village, you know. So, and there was all these bottles thrown under the foundation, because it was a space under there you could see, you know, all those empty bottles. But they were clean, you know, looking, you know, you rinsed out good. And I remember the glass, they looked bluish. And it's the collector's items of today, I think, you know. And so one day my sister came with a popsicle, eating popsicle, and she handed me one. And I said to Rosie, I says, how'd you get this? She said she crawled under the building and got those party pack empty bottles and brought them to the red and white store for the deposits on them. So that's how she got the popsicles. I said, wow, so you don't crawl under there? And so, anyway, we were living over, you know, as I said, along Washington Street, but nobody could see what's going on in there. So, for entertainment, there was, in back of us was a little shack, like, and so that's where Victor Labadan, one of the Filipinos, lived. And he played the saxophone and he could play the guitar. And then the next building was Pete Nampai. He played the saxophone and the violin. And then on the other side was somebody who played the banjo, ukulele. You know, somebody played the ukulele there. And then who was the drummer? That was my sister, Rosie. I'd watch her foot, as she beat that drum, that pedal. She never missed a beat. And with the drumsticks on the snare and the cymbal, just go like this and go like that, and so they formed a orchestra right there, And then these Filipinos would join up with the Filipinos at Fairmore's musicians over there that played the ukulele and the bass viol. And a Filipino there played the bass viol. He would slap it around, like that. And then Rosie would be playing the drums, and Victor playing the sax, like that. We had good music. They played the latest tunes of the day. Victor and Pete Denamba, they had 10-cent song sheets of those days, popular song sheets. And they could read notes to play the sax, And so Rosie could sing too. She sang. And I was always wishing that she would be discovered by a talent scout and would land in Hollywood. And so she could dance too, the jitterbug. And they played, they were good at playing the waltz, rumba, foxtrot, jitterbug music, like that. And I'd watch my sister Rosie play the drums. And she'd beat that drum, with that beater, with the whole furry thing on the tip, just beating the drum. And her drumsticks would just go at the same time, and she'd go like that with the cymbals, She had good timing. And she was a really good singer, too. So they even played in Watsonville at a white nightclub. On weekends, Rosie would be playing the drums there too. So anyway, they played at helped play Victor, and Rosie would help play at Paramore's parties that they had, the Filipinos there, and they lived in this 2-story bunkhouse. And then the lower floor was where they had the dance for the parties, and the music played like that. And we had always delicious Filipino food like that. And so these Filipinos who lived here in Hardin's area, they worked at Fairmore's. And they were good workers. They knew how to prune, and just when they thinned the lettuce, like that, they were really good at it. And they took pride in their work. And remember the pear trees at Fairmore's. There were many of them. And they looked beautiful. And the way the Filipinos pruned them, they looked alike, all of them. Just the fruit that came off from the Bartlett pears and the kumis were huge. They were big, and even the tomatoes that were grown out there, they were the beef steak tomatoes, great big ones. And then the flowers in the fields, they were radiant, they were beautiful. It was the showcase of San Juan. And it was even on postcards, sold in the Mission Hardware. I mean, not Mission Hardware, but the drugstore. And Mary's sister worked in there. The drugstore, yeah. So Filipinos were on the farms in the San Juan Valley, working for farmers, and in the Hollister area too. There were many of them. And then when later on, one of the Spiegel camp, Spiegel carrot growers, there, the foreman from over there came to San Juan and asked my brother-in-law to be foreman of the Filipino laborers here at Spiegel camp on Flint Road. And Spiegel built nice cabins, brand new ones, for the Mexican laborers then, the Filipinos. And then we lived in the Flint home. It was a historical home there. Heard about the Flint family that moved over here to San Juan Valley. They had a big house there. We had an indoor bathtub. We had a toilet in there. We had three bedrooms, and we had a large dining room where my sister, she was the cook for the Filipino workers, and they ate in there. They ate in the dining room.
The Felisa?
Excuse me?
Felisa?
Yeah, Felisa was my older sister.
Because you didn't mention your older sister. You didn't mention your older brothers and sisters.
Well, when my mother and father separated, we lived with my sister right here. Sister and her husband.
Felisa?
Felisa and Arcadio. Agran.
Yeah,
I'm glad you asked because I was, wanting to have somebody ask me questions. And if I could answer, because Mary is an old timer here in San Juan. So anyway, we moved over there to the Spiegel camp, and the Filipinos from the Jardines area moved over there too. So they worked for Spiegel. I think EH, I'm not remember really, but anyway, Spiegel. But we didn't pay any rent there. He had built those cabins and everything was nice, for change. And Leonard Catano, the past mayor of San Juan, he lived up on the hill with his mother, father, sister, and Mr. Kellogg that asked my brother-in-law to be foreman of the Filipinos in Spiegel camp. Well, he lived up on the hill. The Spiegel built a new home up there too for them. So anyway, the workers there, they worked for 65 cents an hour, 8 hours a day. It's back-breaking. And I wonder why they work with short holes, because I worked out in the fields too during vacation time. And then I found out, years later, over the news that why the farmers had the short hose because it was cheaper to buy than buying the long handle hose. So I said, so that's it, So anyway, I was in high school then, and the war broke out. World War II broke out. So the Filipinos were drafted into the service. Of course, they weren't citizens then. They couldn't buy property, just like the Japanese. They were citizens, so they couldn't buy property. So, but when the Filipinos got into the army that were eligible, they were sworn in en masse to be U.S. citizens. So that when the war was over, through the GI Bill, they were able to buy homes of their own. And so, anyway, that was a turning point for the Filipinos. And my husband was in Army also, but he came from Bakersfield. And he worked in Arvin, where there were a lot of Filipinos there working in the grapes. And so he met me through my brother. They were in the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiments that was formed. And they were stationed at the rodeo grounds in Salinas and at Fort Ord. And so that's how my husband got to meet me, and through my brother, because my brother was first sergeant of Company F, the Filipino Infantry Regiment. So they went overseas and fought. Some of them got killed, like that. And my husband was, he joined reconnaissance, the intelligence, and he was a spy in the jungle of the Philippines on the island of Mindoro. He came through it all right. He was 4 of the 9 that went on the island of Mindoro by submarine, landed there by submarine from Australia. And he was one of the survivors. But the first 2 sergeants that were captured, they were tortured and for information and then killed, And they have white officers. Each of those group of Filipinos were trained in Australia for survival, for this secret mission to the Philippines. And my brother was already in Australia. So when the first trained commandos, like you'd say, came over to the Philippines from Australia by submarine, they were attacked. And they rocked that submarine to and fro, and the pipes leaked, creaked, and everything else. And they got through it by sending oil, bits of clothing, debris, through the torpedo tube. So when it surfaced, the Japanese destroyer thought they had sunken, and they posted about it over the radio. And so, of course, my husband and the rest, kind of chuckled about it, but it was not funny to begin with anyway. And then they got over to the Philippines, and they landed on the island of Mindoro, and that's when they began their spy work. They had this hand-cranked radio. Their headquarters was in Australia. Sent back messages there for the movement of the Japanese troops on the islands. And my husband escaped so many times from being captured. And so, as I say, 4 of them came out alive from there. And so my husband came back to the States. I'm half Japanese, but he married me anyway. He fought the Japanese over there, but he came back to marry me. Part Japanese anyway. But anyway, Rosie and I have our own home now. And mine is on Washington Street at the by that overpass there, the end of Washington and 7th. Rosie has her home in Turlock. And so life is better for us now. And I hope that you got enough information about the life of the Filipinos here in Harding's area and throughout the valley where they were. And excuse me. Oh yeah. Well, when I were in high school, that Pearl Harbor was attacked. Well, I was cheering, for our side here. I didn't know that we were going to be sent to the camp ourselves because we were part Japanese, So one thing after another, And so we were almost to be sent to the camp somewhere. And we were supposed to report at the rodeo grounds at Salinas. But that's where they had the Japanese there first, before they went to the camps, But, so, anyway, well, almost even giving up, I felt badly about it. I didn't think I was going to be sent, but it didn't have anything to do with the war, So, anyway, we were let out, we were prevented to go to the camp, by the judge, a judge in Hollister, because my father and my brother-in-law is Filipino, and the foreman, Mr. Pello, that got us to be out there to work for Spiegel, They went to Hollister. I forgot the name of the judge, but if it's Breen or Joseph or something like that, but he let us stay out because my father explained our side of the story. So we were permitted to stay out, so we finished school. And one of my classes was my teacher, Mr. Candy, over there. And he's a World War II veteran, served in the Pacific, in the Philippines. And so one day out in the fields when I was working on the weekends, or vacation time, I was about to go back to second year of junior college. Rosie said, "Why don't you join the WAC?" And I said, no. Then when we went back to the house after we finished working, this voice came to my ears. Really. It was my voice. It was when I was in Salinas. I was playing out in the yard with my sister. And I said to myself, I said out loudly, "I wish girls could join the army. I would too." So then I thought it over and I said, if I don't do what I said, I'd be a liar. So anyway, my brother was out in the Pacific already, in New Guinea. And he was on the way to the Philippines, to liberate the prisoners there. And so I made up my mind, got in touch with the recruiter in Salinas. Oh, right away he got in touch with me, And then he said for me to report to the recruiting office in Salinas. So Rosie drove, she learned to drive before I did. She drove me over there to Salinas and then went to the office, and then, boy, I was surprised when I was handed a test paper, intelligence test. It was just like in high school, you know. And so I said, wow. It had everything. It had math and grammar, spelling and all that, you know. So I sat down and I took the test, you know. I was hoping to pass it. And so I had it back, the paper back to the officer, recruiting officer. So I passed. So Rosie said, "You passed?" I said, "Yeah." So then after that, I had to take a physical test. So I was sent to San Francisco, and I made 1A. So and there, my father didn't want me to join. He was in San Pedro then. He was working in the sardine, that place. Well, anyway, the sardines anyhow in a plant right in San Pedro, and there were a lot of Filipinos there working there with him. He made that trip all the way back, you know, to prevent me from joining. And in those days, you know, that Greyhound bus, you know, didn't come into San Juan. So he was left off at the highway, 101, at the entrance of the San Juan. And he walked all the way to Spiegel Camp. By that time he got there, you know, I had already joined. I was sorry to have done it because my father thought, well, my brother was in the service, then now his daughter, even my mother didn't want me to join, you know. But it was